Hiya, I'd just like to show you how we can ink the edges of our cardstock using our ink pads. Now this is a really simple and easy technique, but sometimes we can struggle to get that really smooth blended finish. And I'd just like to share a few tips with you how we can achieve that seamless blend every time. So all I've got a piece of white cardstock. Now it can be any colour cardstock that you like. We'd just like to ink the edges and it's going to draw our eye into the centre of that panel. I've chosen quite a small piece of cardstock, but it can be any size whatsoever. The ink pad I'm going to be using today is one of our Rare Earth Reactions ink pads. It's this lovely green colour. Now these reaction ink pads are a hybrid ink pad, meaning they're a fusion of both dye and pigment ink. So they've got some properties of dye inks and some properties of our pigment inks. And they actually give us a really lovely effect when we blend with them. We can also stamp with them as well, but we're going to be focusing on blending today. So that's my ink pad. In order to do the blending, I'm actually using one of my Rare Earth dusting brushes. Now you can see this one's been used a few times, shall we say. I would keep one brush per colour. So you don't have to have one for every single ink pad that you own. You can have one blue brush, one green brush, one yellow brush, etc, etc. But you don't want to cross-contaminate your brushes. So for example, I wouldn't like to use this green brush with the yellow ink, as you might pick up some of the green onto the yellow and mix the colours, and it wouldn't give a nice effect really, not what we want. So these brushes are fantastic if you find that when you are trying to blend using your inks, if you find you're a little bit heavy-handed, perhaps you're getting blotches with your blending, perhaps you find you're adding a little bit too much ink, your brushes are perfect because they give you more of a subtle blend and it's really easy to get that smooth blend of ink. So I definitely recommend that. Now you can take your brush directly to your ink pad, as we've not got any water on our brush, so we don't need to worry about anything getting diluted. That's absolutely fine. Or we can actually smooch some of our ink out onto a non-porous surface like our glass mat, or you could be using a messy mat like a non-stick mat. It's completely up to you. What you'll find is if you actually add some of your ink onto your mat, you'll get a slightly paler colour. It'll be slightly less intense. So if you are struggling with applying too much ink, that's definitely the way to go. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some circular motions with my brush to my ink, just to apply some of the ink onto there. Using circular motions is going to give us a smoother blend, which is what we want. I'm going to anchor my card in place using my fingers. I'm just going to take the brush and starting off the piece of cardstock, so starting on the mat and then just moving onto the mat using circular motions. Now I'm not pressing on hard, I'm going to build up that colour. We can always add colour, but it's difficult to take it away. So circular motions, don't go from side to side or up and down. We want circular motions to give us the smoothest finish we possibly can. And how much ink you apply is totally up to you, but as I say, do build up that colour from quite a pale light base to darker if you so desire. So you can work slowly if you like, if you're slightly less confident, or you can, as you build up your confidence, you can work a little bit faster. As you can see, I've not actually applied any more ink to my brush. I just had that one application of ink and I've still got plenty of colour on that brush that I'm just laying down. So circular motion starting on your glass mat, i.e. off your cardstock, and moving onto your cardstock. That just minimises any sort of blotches and gives you a smoother effect. Now another thing I definitely recommend is always having a sort of slippery surface under what you're working onto. So I would not recommend having a piece of cardstock underneath the piece of cardstock you're working onto. You want something that's going to allow your brush to glide. So something like a non-stick mat, so one of those brown silicone mats, or a glass mat, or a piece of acetate even, is perfect, as it allows your brush to move and glide smoothly, which is one of the reasons why we start off the cardstock, to get that lovely gliding motion sort of ready and set up, and then we move onto our cardstock and we get that really smooth blend. So you can see we've got quite a smooth, soft finish to there. If we wanted, we could apply a little more ink to our brush and build up that colour, just like so. I mean, you could fill in the area a little more in the centre, but it's quite nice to have that sort of vignette effect with colour at the edges, and it really draws your eye into the centre of this panel. So perhaps I would go and stamp a sentiment into there, or a little image, or have a die cut. It's completely up to you, but this just really frames this panel and draws the eye in to give a really gorgeous finish. And of course you can be using whatever colour of ink you'd like. We've got lots of lovely colours within our Rare Earth Reactions ink pad range. Of course the blending inks from Rare Earth also work really well for this technique, as you'd expect from the name. As you can see, very easily and very quickly we've just built up some shading around the edge of this piece, just using the green ink pad, using our Rare Earth blending brushes, just like so. But once you start blending, you really will be away. It takes a tiny bit of practice, but not much at all. Once you know what you're doing, it's very, very easy to do. So that's a few tips on how to blend using your inks.